What people often see when they look at lawyers is competence, confidence, and resilience. People assume that because you are trained to deal with pressure, you naturally know how to cope with everything that comes with the profession. But I think there is something we do not talk about enough, and that is who supports the lawyers. Because behind the professionalism, behind the deadlines, the strategy, the client care, there are still human beings navigating emotionally demanding situations every single day. And that is true whatever your level in your profession. If you are a junior lawyer, the beginning of your career can feel incredibly intense. You are learning fast, you want to prove yourself, you are trying to understand the law, the culture of the firm, the expectations, maybe the politics, and this all at once. And often there is this unspoken pressure to appear capable at all times. So when something affects you emotionally, a difficult client, a traumatic case, an aggressive exchange, a mistake, or a difficult hearing, many young lawyers keep it to themselves because they do not want to seem weak. They do not want to look unexperienced, and they do not want to disappoint. And what I hear very often is, I didn't really feel I had anyone I could speak to honestly. Not necessarily because they were unkind, but because law firms are busy environments. Everyone is under pressure, and sometimes there is simply not enough space to pause and discuss what is happening. But then something interesting happens later in people's career, but the problems do not disappear, they just change shape. You become more senior, you become responsible for clients, teams, strategy, billing, business development. People start coming to you with problems all day long. And suddenly you are expected not only to be a good lawyer, but also a good manager, a good mentor, a leader, a good colleague. Yet very few lawyers are actually taught how to manage the human side of leadership. How do you support a struggling junior? How do you deal with tension inside a team? How do you have difficult conversations? How do you create boundaries with clients who expect constant availability? How do you carry responsibility for others without becoming emotionally exhausted yourself? And often, senior lawyers feel they need to have all the answers. They become the person everyone relies on, the stable one, the strong one. But who do they speak to when they feel overwhelmed? When they doubt themselves? When they feel emotionally saturated? When the responsibility starts becoming heavy? Because law is deeply intellectual, but it's also deeply emotional. You are dealing with conflict, risk, human distress, trauma, people at the most difficult moments of their lives. And no matter how experienced you are, the exposure has an impact. Sometimes subtly, sometimes progressively, until exhaustion, disconnection, or emotional overload starts affecting not only the professional, but also the person behind the role. In many helping professions, psychologists, mediators, social workers, healthcare professionals, there are recognized spaces where practitioners can pause, reflect, process, and regain perspective. The legal profession needs those spaces too. Not spaces of judgment, not spaces of performance review, but spaces where lawyers can think openly, reflect honestly, and speak freely about the realities of the work they carry every single day. Because sustainable practice does not happen by accident. It requires reflection, it requires support, it requires a safe space. And in the legal profession, that safe space is provided by reflective supervision.